verse 7. And let's notice what kind of fire destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. There's a particular type of fire that destroyed these cities. The fire and brimstone that fell from heaven and the smoke went up like a furnace. It was a certain kind of fire. Notice Jude 7. It says there, as Sodom and Gomorrah, and the cities around them, in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example. These cities are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of what? Suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. What kind of fire destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? The Bible says that it was eternal fire that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. It was eternal fire and brimstone, if you please, because we just read that fire and brimstone fell from heaven upon the cities. Now I want you to notice a text that appears to be in contradiction with Jude 7. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 6. And I underline the word appears because there are no contradictions in the Bible when you study carefully. 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 6. Speaking about the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, it says, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into what? Into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward would live ungodly. What were Sodom and Gomorrah reduced to? They were reduced to ashes, but they were destroyed with what kind of fire? They were destroyed with everlasting or with eternal fire. Now the question is, are Sodom and Gomorrah still burning today? Sodom and Gomorrah are not burning today. So eternal fire must mean something different than what most people assume that it means. Are you understanding what I'm saying? The question is, what is the fire that destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah? We need to go to a few other texts in the Old Testament that explain what that fire is. Go with me to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 23 and 24. Deuteronomy chapter 4, verses 23 and 24. Here God is warning Israel not to practice idolatry. And notice what it says. Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. In other words, don't make any idols. And then it says in verse 24, the reason why you should not make these idols, for the Lord your God is what? Is a consuming fire, a jealous God. Let me ask you, what is God? God is a what? A consuming fire. So we begin to understand what the fire is. The fire is whom? God, according to this. Now you're saying, is God then a bunch of flames of fire? No, we're going to notice that God is fire in a specific sense. Now go with me to Hebrews 12, 28 and 29, where this verse, Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 24, is quoted in the New Testament. Hebrews chapter 12, verses 28 and 29. Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom which cannot be shaken, let us have grace, by which we may serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear. Now, why should we serve God acceptably with reverence and godly fear? Notice, for our God is a consuming fire. Who is the consuming fire? God is the consuming fire, according to this. Now, does this mean that God is composed of flames of fire? Of course not. Fire means something concerning the nature of God, who God is. I want you to notice Exodus chapter 24 and verses 15 through 17. In our last lecture, we noticed that God and sin cannot exist together. That's why God ultimately has to eradicate sin from the universe, because holiness and sin cannot coexist.